Welcome to my adventure from Canyon Lake to the Bat Cave. I have kayaked Canyon Lake a number of times. It's one of my favorite lakes to kayak. It's just beautiful, picturesque, steep canyon walls, deep water, and just a very, very pretty lake. I had watched a video from Ryan Gordon, who approached a place called the Bat Cave from the Superstition side, about a 2.5 mile, very, very difficult hike. And I saw the location. I thought, well, that's really, really close to places I have kayaked with relative ease, and I thought it would be much easier to get to this location from the lake side instead of the Superstition side. It's about a 3.5 mile kayak, very, very placid, easy waters to kayak. Took me about 50 minutes to get from the car to the end of the Crucifix Gorge. So you can see here how nice the kayaking is. It's just beautiful, easy, clean water. Very few people on the lake this day. And then I have a drone video I had taken weeks prior where I wanted to kind of just see from the air the Crucifix Gorge. And I had to actually capture the Bat Cave inadvertently on this video. You can see there where the water ends and where the canyon begins. And there's the Bat Cave up in the center top. And it looks very, very easy to get to from the air. It's like, wow, that's so close. Wouldn't take anything at all to get up there. So here's from the air, and you can see a bit of the context of the relative to the rest of Canyon Lake, this Crucifix Gorge. So here's me kayaking into the entrance of Crucifix Gorge. I would much prefer to do this than the 1/4 mile of brutal hiking through the very, very rugged terrain and the boulders. Much, much easier going, carrying a lot of gear with a kayak with relative ease. The boulders here are very huge. You can see one there that's looking like it's about to fall in. There's one in the water. Now the water level is controlled by a dam, and so you never know what you're going to get when you get in here, and this is a little more shallow than I'd seen before, and so I'd actually walked my kayak the last few yards to the beach where I was going to park it. Crucifix Gorge gets its name by a rock formation that was also in the Legend of the Superstitions on the History Channel show. They thought it was something that the Jesuits had carved into the canyon walls, but I'd never noticed it before, but here it is, and I took a photograph of it, and I think it's pretty clear that it's a natural marking in the rock. Doesn't look at all like it's been carved. It'd be basically impossible to get up there. Here's the start of my trek by foot. I parked the kayak, and I'm moving on to the climbing section of the adventure. And I made the mistake of getting my hiking boots wet. I should have kept my sandals on until I got to dry land, so that was a little unpleasant to be walking in soggy shoes the whole way up and the whole way down. But you can see this massive sized boulders here. There are many of them the size of a bus or even larger. It's very difficult going because you can't always go in a straight line, or there's no straight lines at all to speak of through a lot of these areas. And they're very smooth rocks, they're slippery rocks. In that case I had to kind of crawl through a whole hole between the rocks. Here's a section of the canyon floor which was relatively easy. It almost was like a sidewalk, kind of eroded in a smooth way. Made it easy going. I can only imagine in a summer monsoon or heavy, heavy rain that this gorge would be just flooded with a torrential flood of water pushing these massive rocks around. And coming up to our very first view of the Bat Cave from the land. As I was hiking, I was very mindful of the possibility of rattlesnakes. They are definitely out and about, but I've actually never seen one. But they're very timid creatures. There's really not that big of concerns unless you're walking through grass or someplace that you just would stumble upon one. They don't want to be messed with, and you certainly don't want to mess with them. And they're kind enough to rattle if you get too close. So you just have to kind of keep an ear out and an eye out, and not go through the brush and the grass without looking for them. I thought about climbing up to the Bat Cave straight line here, but the vegetation was a little too thick, and desert vegetation is usually very prickly and unpleasant, so I opted to continue up the floor of the canyon to find a better line with less vegetation and maybe perhaps a little less steep as well. So here's where I actually cut off from the canyon floor on my way up the hill to the cave, and this was much steeper than I had anticipated by looking at topo maps and Google Earth. Also, the rocks were very loose. This was not easy going. It's very, very steep. You can see, it's hard to tell with the GoPro because it's such a wide angle lens, but you can see on the corner there about how steep this hill is. It's not an easy hike at all. Getting a little bit closer, it's hard to imagine back in the 1940s and 50s, I believe, is when they were actually harvesting guano to make gunpowder and fertilizer from this cave. That they would be able to traverse carrying hundreds and hundreds of pounds of this stuff up and down this hill, but I'm sure they had obviously figured out some sort of way to do that. We're getting a lot closer to the cave. Here's a photograph I took. You can see the cave is not very deep. It's actually a very shallow cave. Ryan had mentioned that there's these bat formations that look like they've been painted onto the wall right next to the cave, and he suspected the possibility of an Indian. Indians have painted those, but I don't think so. They look like a natural formation. Here's a selfie of me, and then a panorama around 360 degrees from the Bat Cave. All that black dark stuff is bat guano. There's a ladder there that you'll see here in a moment that climbs up into the top of the cave, and in the Legend of the Superstition Mountains they actually climbed up in there. I can't imagine doing that. The smell is awful. It looks extraordinarily treacherous. I would not trust that ladder at all. It's probably 70 years old. There's ropes as well, but I still wouldn't trust it. It's very no, would not. It's very slick stuff. I would not trust myself on that at all. I don't think there's any treasure. I was not about to risk my life to look for anything up in there. The climb back down was probably more treacherous than the climb up, because just it typically is. Legs are a little more tired and so on. But these rocks are very, very loose. As you'll see, there's stepped on one very large rock and it just went tumbling right under my feet, and it went all the way down to the canyon floor below as I watched it tumble down. So when you're out this remote, there's no cell service, there's no hope of rescue in any short period of time. If you are injured or anything like that, you're going to be stuck for overnight at least. My wife knew where I was, but it would be a long stay before rescue would arrive, I'm sure. Now here's a better view. I had the sun in my back coming back down, so you can see better some of these massive boulders that I had to hike through. Very slow going through a lot of these sections. It's extremely remote. I would not recommend going out here by yourself. I did because I enjoy hiking by myself, but I also understand the risks involved, and I'm very, very careful and fairly experienced at doing this. But if you are not, I would certainly recommend either hiking with people or just simply not going on something like this. This is a pretty advanced hike. Again, these massive, massive boulders. It's so hard to tell. This is such a wide-angle lens on this GoPro camera that you don't really get a good sense of the height of these rocks and how tricky it is to kind of navigate through them. In the video, it actually looks quite easy. I'm thinking, well, what's the problem? Just step down there. But I know my limitations, and I don't push them, especially when I'm out in an environment such as this. So here's a little gully I kind of have to navigate through. I ended up not coming down the same route that I went up, which made it a little bit tricky. Here I've got probably a 15-foot drop I've come across. I'm like, uh-oh. I considered going around finding another route down, but then I figured I could shimmy my way down relatively safely. It's not a true vertical, but it's a little bit treacherous here. Looking for a good place to place my feet. So there's only a quarter mile of this. Like I said, Ryan had climbed 2.5 miles down from the top of this canyon on the Superstition side, and similar terrain, I think, by the looks of his video. And that's just hard to imagine. It took me a good 40 minutes to navigate a quarter mile through this thing, and it's just pretty mind-boggling that he would have climbed down through the canyon from the top. So here I'm getting really close to the bottom, getting back to my kayak. Familiar rocks that I've been around many times before, so it's kind of nice to know I'm very close to the safety of the kayak. I mean, navigate underneath these huge boulders. They're many thousands of tons, I'm sure. Probably been there for thousands and thousands of years. Unlikely they're going to come crashing down on me, but you always get a little paranoid. Here we finally reached the level of the water of the lake, and then my kayak. And I do appreciate you watching the video, and send any comments down below. Thanks a lot.